Hey everybody, GC13 here. The third book of Infinity Train was a very tough one for me to watch, especially given everything the first episode did to portray Grace and Simon as two horrible people. I was able to persevere though, because if there was one thing I trusted, it's that our chosen protagonist wouldn't stay horrible for long. And my faith was rewarded. Grace soon found herself struggling with a strange feeling she had never felt before: compassion. By the end of the season, she had been completely transformed. The Irredeemable had been redeemed. There is another show I've watched recently where a seemingly irredeemable character ends up being redeemed after all. Actually, multiple characters. I am, of course, talking about the diamonds from Steven Universe. Yellow and blue, and to a lesser extent, white. Though the showrunners are very clear that the Diamond Authority had never met any sapient species before humanity, the crimes they committed against gemkind are quite severe. They presided over a totalitarian society where, well, I'll just let Jasper explain.
Every gem is made for a purpose, to serve the Order of the Diamonds. Those who cannot fit inside this order must be purged.
We've seen what sentence is given when a gem steps out of line, or when she can't fulfill the single role envisioned for her. Shattering, a fate much like execution, though much more horrific, as some tortured fragments of your consciousness live on forever. Likewise, we've seen the crimes of the Apex. A terrible campaign of death and destruction across the train, despoiling entire cars for the sheer joy of it. Book 3 goes to great pains to emphasize how awful they are with its selection of their victims. We watch as they sack a car while its residents are performing a song about empathizing with other people, taught to them by one of the heroes of the previous book, Jesse Kosei. Then, just because they had so much fun, they go on to terrorize the turtles and corgis Tulip met on our journey in the first book. With the exception of taking one car resident as a slave, we don't see that they get anything useful out of their successful raid. What they did have was fun, and I guess that's what really matters. Now, anyone who spends much time in the Steven Universe fandom will see a significant group of people who can never forgive the Diamonds, who think that what they did was unforgivable and that nothing can ever make up for it. You can certainly count me among those who felt the same way about the Apex. But, as expected, Owen took Grace on a journey that, by the end, had me sympathizing with her. A journey that, not coincidentally, shares quite a few similarities with the journey of the Diamonds. While Episode 1 underlined what a horrific group the Apex was, we did get one humanizing moment with Grace. As she and Simon were escaping the car, a hapless young turtle was caught in their path. For all of her talk about how the denizens of the train were just gnolls who didn't actually have any feelings, when she only had time to react, not to think, she instinctively swerved out of the way. As if to narratively underline how sincere that instinct was, this act of mercy is what breaks Grace's pack and forces her and Simon to make their way back to the mall car on foot, leading to Grace's turn away from the dark side. The Diamonds also shared a humanizing moment. While we had seen Blue in a flashback before, and Yellow when Peridot called her, our heroes had never been in the presence of the Diamonds before that will be all. In it, Stephen and Greg witness what was meant to be a private moment between sisters, with Blue still grieving Pink's death after 5,000 years, and Yellow urging her to bury her pain and carry on just as she has, though we see that grief leak out, humanizing even the mean one of the pair. Now, just because you've humanized your villain doesn't mean they're redeemed yet. Something needs to make them grow. The Diamonds didn't reform just because of one song. Not even meeting Hazel was enough to change Grace on its own.
And if it doesn't get us to the exit, then we'll make them regret they ever met us.
No, the seeds of Grace's redemption started to sprout in the third episode, when she turns back to see how powerless Tuba feels to stop Grace and Simon from taking Hazel away from her. Grace looked back expecting to feel smug, but feels sympathy. She's so distracted she doesn't notice her number go down, a visible indicator of her becoming a better person. Then, in the next episode, it goes down again as she forms an actual, genuine relationship with Hazel. When the Diamonds formed their own relationship with Stephen, that's when their redemption began in earnest. Yes, at the time they viewed it as merely a resumption of their relationship with Pink, but at the very least, they're finally spending time with Stephen where they're not trying to kill him and his friends. You know, how all friendships start. Of course, you can't just overcome years, or millennia, of prejudice at any speed worth making a TV show about just by hanging out with someone. You need a crisis to spark a big re-examination of your beliefs. For Grace, it was the revelation that Hazel wasn't a passenger with a broken number. She was a null. Grace had already built up so much attachment to Hazel that it never crossed her mind that she was a null to be killed like all of the others. That Hazel assumed she would was a big wake-up call. When the Diamonds locked Stephen in a tower for fusing with Connie, remember, cross-type fusion is very not allowed, Blue came up to try to guilt him into falling into line, but it was Stephen who guilted her. Regardless of how much they claimed to love her, the Diamonds were always awful to Pink, and they were being awful to Stephen. Blue hated it on Homeworld too, and that's when she decided to help Steven escape it. Of course, while rescuing Steven's friends, they were confronted by Yellow, and while Yellow won the fight, she lost the argument. Even she hated it on Homeworld. And that brings us to the big fight. Simon had all of the same opportunities to change that Grace had, but unlike Grace, he never bonded with Hazel. He did have one last chance when watching Grace's memories, however. Upon seeing that Hazel was afraid he'd kill her, and that Grace decided to protect her, he could have empathized with the sight of a small child afraid he'd throw her to the wheels. Instead, he got mad that Grace kept a secret from him. Even though they walked down the path of the apex together, he refused to follow her off of it, and he forced Grace to fight him. Grace is the clear good guy in this fight. She suffers for the empathy she shows Simon, only to be saved by the empathy she showed some paper cranes. To keep her blameless, it's a force of nature, a gome, that does Simon in. Just like Simon was very set on following the Apex's original path, White wasn't very amenable to changing how things were run on Homeworld. The way things were suited her just fine, after all. To end the fight without Steven having to hurt her, White does win, but just like with Yellow, ends up losing the argument afterwards because, flustered by having been wrong about what Steven was, she reveals that she herself is in fact not perfect. The entire ethos of perfection that she had demanded that Blue and Yellow implement was based on a lie. Her secret out, Steven promises to show her a new way to make everything better. And so, both series end having redeemed some truly awful people. Grace resolves to work with the Apex to find a new way forward, while Blue and Yellow dismantle the Empire and use their powers for good. Fans of Steven Universe will note that White got the least redemption time, and her redemption tends to be the least accepted. Yes, we later see that it's genuine in the movie and in Steven Universe Future, but since it all happened in a flash, it doesn't feel as convincing as Blue's, Yellow's, and Grace's. That's just one more argument for why the similarities between Infinity Trains and Steven Universe's redemptions matter, I guess. So, what do you guys think? Was Grace's redemption successful? What about Blue's and Yellow's? Heck, what do you think about White's? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more cartoon videos.